Hello, and welcome to another session of Incomprehensible Waffle, better known as the Sticky Floor podcast. I'm Callum, and once again, I'm joined by Sima.
Hello.
And we've got a new face today, like we promised we would. Let me introduce you to Robert. Hi, Robert.
Hello, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah, Daniel, unfortunately, is under the weather. Pretty sure it's not COVID. He hasn't gone into specifics, but I won't assume the worst. It's a bit shit because today's film is his recommendation, but I guess we'll just have to soldier on.
Yeah.
Today's film is Vivre, a French film by Jean-Luc Godard from 1962, or in English that would be My Life to Live. So guys, Sima, Robert, since you're the new face, we'll start with you. What did you think of the film?
You thrown me into the deep end first. I thought it was pretty good. I'm really bad for watching foreign films. So I wasn't super prepared for it, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Should I get into it? I thought there was some interest in I wasn't entirely sure where it was going for most of it the first time I watched it, but towards the end there's one conversation that helps a lot. It brings everything up to light at the end of sort of what it's trying to say and what it wants you to be thinking about. And something good about it was that I didn't just forget it instantly after watching it. I've thought about it pretty much every day since I've watched it, which is always a good sign. At least got me thinking.
Cool, and we'll jump into the details a wee bit later. Sima, give us your thoughts.
I thought it was absolutely visually gorgeous. I was totally kind of hooked from the get-go with the shots and the kind of composition of them and everything. It was, and like Robert said, it does it's something that you have to kind of give it time to marinate with you for a while, because obviously in the beginning, once you've finished it the first time round, it doesn't settle straight away. It is something that you have to kind of let itself kind of, I don't know how to verbalize it. It's you just have to give it time to let it mature in a way.
Yeah.
It's a good film, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's a really good film and I really enjoyed myself watching it. Cool. Basically.
I would admit it's been a while since I've watched a foreign film, and I used to watch them quite a bit. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, we don't like reading subtitles," and never used to bother me. But there must be something happening to me, because I found myself actually quite struggling to keep up with what was being said. So I think that might be just a sign of the COVID times, because I'm just looking at my phone all the time, and it's my concentration is like that. It took me a wee while to get into it. I will admit I kind of found it a bit tedious to begin with, but once I kind of realised where it was going, I was actually much more into it. I felt like if I had one major criticism, I felt like it didn't really feel heavy until the heaviness of what was going on, and it didn't seem to sort of take effect till right to the very end. But I understand, for a film from 1962, in terms of its overall cinematography, I realised, okay, this is ahead of its time. A lot of long takes, a lot of extended takes, which were not common at the time. I kind of understand why this is important cinematically. Can I just get a question? Are either of you familiar at all, this is part of the whole French New Wave? Is this a kind of a film movement that either of you have seen much of? Because I'll admit I haven't watched much at all. Robert, you're shaking your head.
I can't
watch at all.
Yeah.
Nah.
I don't think I've seen a Jean-Luc Godard, even though I've heard him being spoke about quite a few times.
Yeah.
So where to start with this? What do you think of the main character, Nana?
I think she's really interesting. I was watching it again just before this recorded, so I've watched it twice. I didn't actually catch the end of it, but I've seen it all anyway. But I don't know. She's really interesting, and how she interacts with people is probably what I find most interesting, because some, like the people that actually seem to know her in the film, she doesn't really seem to get super close with them. She doesn't really let them in a bit.
Yeah.
But then she's she will with people that don't really seem to care for her much. She seems quite isolated, which is kind of shown a bit in like every conversation she has. The camera's only on her, or it's not only on her, but when other people are talking, it doesn't switch to them. Which gives me the sense that like she's in her own head a bit. Yeah, and also like, do you think she's always entirely like truthful with herself?
No,
Like she
no.
seems to like lie a bit to me,
Yeah.
which I found interesting.
Well, I definitely think with her kind of the decisions she makes throughout the story, even from the beginning, she is kind of deluding herself a bit.
Yeah, it does. It's kind of like an unreliable narrator kind of moment with her, because she is kind of like living in a sort of state of delusion, not delusion, but maybe not being entirely truthful with her reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, she contradicts herself quite a bit
Yeah.
as well.
I mean, for me, and this is kind of going back to my main criticism, that it wasn't really until maybe the last two scenes. Well, actually, no, the bit where she kind of, where I'm assuming so there's a scene near the beginning where she tries to get the key to her room, but the concierge won't let her in. So I'm assuming by that point she'd been evicted or something.
Mm.
And I'm just saying, it's only really that scene and a couple near the end that the kind of heaviness of her actual situation seems to weigh down upon her, because I felt like for a person who's in such dire straits, like it doesn't seem, I don't know, she never seems unkempt, she never looks rough at any point. She's just always presentable.
Yeah, it's very stylized, her kind of misfortune. It's not presented in a kind of classic way where she is like slowly becoming less and less collected in her appearance. It's very it's quite French in that way.
I know.
It's all very
it's all very French. This French
and the aesthetic. The physicality and the aesthetic is very much still kept up. You know.
Yeah,
and whether that affects, you know, the audience's interpretation of the story, that's, you know, that could have like have an effect.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that I've seen plenty of films that are of a more kind of Hollywood affair where the main character kind of goes through this sort of arc where their situation becomes worse and worse, but their physical appearance doesn't worsen, apart from maybe their hair gets a bit ruffled. But to be honest, for a large part of it, didn't actually like her. I kind of felt like when we seen her at the beginning with her husband, it wasn't entirely clear why she was splitting up with him. I mean, apart from the fact that she basically just didn't love him anymore. But
it seemed like they had a lot of like, they like were pretty much insulting each other the whole time, so you can tell there wasn't a lot of love in there anymore.
Yeah. One thing that was interesting about that scene, I don't know if you noticed that, so the scene was almost entirely filmed from, it would cut to her and it would cut to her husband, Paul, and it was filmed with their backs to the camera, and like she would say something and then it would cut to him and then you'd hear her saying the same thing again, and it would happen like vice versa. Like she'd say, Paul, you're horrible, and it would cut to him and her saying, Paul, you're horrible. So
yeah, I noticed that.
I wonder
like
what
she says, there's one line that she says like 5 times in a row.
Oh yeah,
like I think it is just Paul, you're horrible, or something like that.
Why do you care? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Although she was saying there, she was just practicing saying it to me.
I've heard that, I don't know a lot about Jean-Luc Godard, I'm not gonna lie, but I've looked a bit up about him in preparation for this, and I've heard that he would leave in like actors flubbing lines and retaking them quite a lot.
Oh yeah.
So it could have been that. Or
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also well, just to go back to the scene, because I rewatched all the scenes where that was dialogue heavy, because there are quite a few of them that aren't at all. Because I was missing stuff, because I was eating, like I said, I was eating my dinner whilst I was watching this. So if you look down, you miss a line of dialogue. I I had to rewatch it, and I can realize I forgot that I missed the whole thing that they briefly mentioned that her and her husband have a son, which made me think, oh,
Yeah.
I like you even less now. You're leaving your kid.
Yeah, the child isn't really touched on at all, which is odd.
Yeah,
Yeah, they kind of talk about the child and the husband at the start, and then that's it. They don't really address it much after at all.
I guess it's more the catalyst to the events of the film, which kind of, I guess, if it's coming from her perspective, it really does show maybe how little they have like effect in her life and how like she sees things.
yeah, because she's only 22, which, to be honest, yes, people settled down and had children much younger back then, but
22 is still very young.
yeah, um, yeah, especially to be married. Well, it is now.
Yeah.
What was I going to say next? Oh, I noticed that a lot of the scenes, like as we kind of didn't mention, there's like the scenes sort of the whole film split up into 12 kind of, I don't know what you call them, vignettes. Like it's very episodic, and
Yeah.
a lot of them, if not all of them, would start in total silence, like there'd be no sound at all, and then after about 5 or 10 seconds, the sound would cut in. Wonder what that would you reckon to that? If that had what the purpose of that was?
So the first time I watched it, I thought either like it's meant to make her feel a bit isolated, or it's a bad YouTube stream, and I wasn't sure. But I think it was deliberate from what I've looked up afterward.
Yeah, it does seem like a stylistic choice. How it's broken down.
So what
Yeah,
effect?
because the music comes in and out as well. Like there's one song in it, or not one song. There's like one main theme that comes in and then just goes for the rest of the scene or section of the movie.
Yeah.
So what did you make of the cinematography?
I thought it was utterly gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was definitely one of the highlights of the film for me. Not that I didn't enjoy the rest of it. I thought it was quite, it was an interesting piece of French film. But honestly, the way it was shot, especially for the time it was shot in, it was pretty fucking remarkable. I'm not gonna lie. I was very impressed by it, and I liked how immersive that made it feel, and how, I don't know, it did feel like you were getting consumed into her world through the camera lens, which I always enjoy as a technique. You're kind of like, it almost feels like you're not just watching her, you're very much observing her from the angles of Paris. It was set in Paris, right?
It was set in Paris. Although,
just to double check that.
Yeah, there's not that many wide shots in the film, so most of them are close-ups or medium close-ups, so you don't actually get, apart from a few odd shots at locations like, I can't even remember, there's that big famous street in Paris whose name I forget. But yeah, like Paris is a big city. It's not the biggest city in the world, but yeah, you don't get really a sense of the scale of Paris because everything's quite
that's
tight.
What I liked. It was quite insular.
Yeah. One thing I learned from this film, I had to go and look this up. I didn't realise that prostitution is actually legal in France.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
briefly mention something about prostitution laws.
Yeah, because when a character were introduced about halfway through, Raoul, who becomes her pimp, there's a kind of a voiceover of him explaining all the various laws and how it works and how she has to get medical checkups, to a montage of her going to work. So, yeah, I really didn't know that was legal in France. I mean, it's not
technically legal in Britain. It's just brothels are illegal.
Yeah, brothels are illegal in France now.
Work, is legal in Britain, but brothels are illegal here. So
yeah, I actually, by pure chance, I remember I was in Belgium a couple of years ago, and I just walked past this, like, I don't know if you know, like in Amsterdam, you'll see like sex workers, but it's legal, and you'll see women sitting in windows and that. Like, I walked past just a street that was just full of women in windows, and I was just topless, and One was obviously on her lunch break because she was eating a croissant. Crumbs falling on her chest, and I was just like, "That's not very It's not very sexy."
Oh, for fuck's
that's
sake.
so good.
Yeah, that was a wee diversion from topic at
Maybe
hand.
that was her maybe that was her appeal. Maybe that was like her niche, because she
Her
was the one
niche.
that ate shit.
Just like casual. Just
Just relaxed, you know?
yeah.
Character
Girl
Raoul.
next door feel.
Oh yeah, character Raoul. What did you make of him? The pimp.
Yeah, I thought he was seemed like a seedy dude. Like
Yeah.
he's quite manipulative. I thought like he was he seemed quite warm and nice, at least to Nana in person at the start. But as it went on, he seemed to be like harsher and harsher until the end of the film, where he's not very nice at all.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of classic portrayal of pimp.
Yeah. Except he's not wearing like a velvet jacket and a big floppy hat, platform shoes.
There's not like smooth jazz playing in the background every time he comes on screen. But you know.
Yeah. In fact, there wasn't a huge amount of music in the film.
No.
Just a few odd occasions, that first, in fact, the scene where he's introduced in the cafe. That was one thing. I felt like there was a couple of occasions where people so in that scene, a man gets shot, like you hear machine gun fire, and it's sort of mentioned in passing what it was. Like it was some kind of political extremist or something, because then you see police running by and all that. Nobody seems to react to that. Like they look out the window.
Yeah.
You'd think if there was machine.
Sorry. I just remember watching that bit and being so confused because the people in the cafe were like, it was as if like the actors were on a fucking coffee break or something, and they were just like, well, I'm not getting paid for this, so why should I react? Like it was like literally, it was like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was quite confused, but I don't really know what they were going for there.
Yeah.
I guess like the whole point of the film is that she doesn't really help anyone else out. She doesn't really help herself out either. So maybe it could be like, oh, the terrorists are trying to. What were they again? They were
I'm guessing they were supposed to be like some kind of political radicals of some sort. I don't know of what flavour.
Right.
At first I thought it was something.
It is France after all.
It doesn't make it clear what they're fighting for anyway, so you can't really take anything from it.
It's not really integral to the plot. It's just It's just something that happens and it's briefly mentioned because I suppose it's because at this point Raoul comes and starts speaking to her and he says, right, just wait here, I'm gonna see and talk to you in a minute, and then that happens and he doesn't run her. So I suppose it's a reason for him. Well, it's a reason in the plot for him and her not to have their meeting, in which he finally convinces her to work for him because she's already working as a prostitute by that point. Which it doesn't really set you up for that much. Because like I said, this thing is episodic, so quite a few things that we assume happen in between each chapter. Because
yeah, you can fill in the blanks though. I don't think it leaves you entirely confused.
No,
because I think from what I've heard, he likes to just put what he thinks is essential. He won't put much setup if he thinks you can just get it from inferring or whatever. So
yeah, there isn't really much of any exposition in the film.
No.
And later on, I'm guessing, I don't know if he's a punter or he's a fellow. I don't know, or he's one of Raoul's kind of colleagues, for lack of a better word. Is he called Luigi? He's like a fair-haired man.
Is the old guy?
No. That's the remember the sort of the second last scene. She's in a room with the guy who remember the scene where she's dancing around the pool table.
Is it the guy playing pool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the second last scene, she's in the room with him and he's reading from a book. And then I think they basically said they're going to run off together. And she's going to tell Raoul that, you know what I mean, she's leaving. There's like, because he's only in 2 scenes, there's not really much development of that character. So we don't actually see how their relationship develops at all. which kind of lessen the impact. But then again, like I said, it's all in very short vignettes, so you kind of just have to take each one if they are and
Do you
just
think
fill
that
in the
was meant
blanks.
to? Yeah. Do you think that was meant to make it seem like it was just a reckless kind of in the moment decision by her because we don't get
Just
any
to move
setup
on
for
to
it?
the customers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the next scene, she's getting dragged out and she's getting sold to another pimp and it all goes haywire.
Yeah.
This is the final scene. I couldn't quite tell from that. Did Raoul shoot her accident? I can't tell who shot her in that.
It seems like she got shot once and then shot again by Raoul. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
it was
And
quite, even that in itself is quite ambiguous.
yeah, and she, he didn't get the money, so why did he shoot her? So now he's just lost his merchandise.
Yeah. Not,
So
not, not a wise business move on his behalf.
yeah, no, and then just Finn. So
I guess she
end,
was already dead. She was shot before, so that's
yeah,
why he wouldn't like waste time trying to get her or whatever. But
yeah. I mean, so yeah, ends kind of tragically for her, but I don't know how much. I'd be lying if I said I had maybe just because of the way she's portrayed. I didn't have a huge. I didn't feel a huge amount for when she died. Like I felt bad for her, obviously, but
Well, maybe
yeah,
that's the statement piece, you know? Like, when people do go downhill, do we, how much sympathy do we have for them?
um,
Especially in the 60s,
yeah,
you know? It's like, how do we react to someone going through that?
yeah. Um, I don't know. Have either of you seen Kathy Come Home? It's one of Ken Loach's early films.
No.
Uh, I mean, it kind of deals with, well, it's actually about a couple and how their kind of living situation kind of deteriorates over a period of time and how it just eventually takes its toll on them. You see, the problem with that is the difference between that is in that film, you see it take their toll. Like, you know what I mean? Their clothes get shabbier, their hair, their skin, all that. You know what I mean? They look older, they look rougher for it. Like, we don't really see this taking it. She kind of just goes along with everything until then finally at the very end, it all ends horribly, quite abruptly. So I think if I'd seen her being affected more greatly by her situation, I might have maybe had a bit more sympathy for her or empathy. I don't know I always often get those two mixed up.
yeah, I get that. I guess she was meant to be a bit of like a. She didn't really stick up for herself much at all. So
No,
when she was getting treated poorly, she just kind of continued and didn't seem that affected by it because she just sort of she'd be like, "Oh, I guess this is what
yeah,
I should be experiencing," or
which is
so maybe
realistic.
that's why.
People put up with a lot of stuff, especially if they're in desperate circumstances.
Yeah.
I often wondered, like, wonder what happened to her record shop job because at the start she's working at a record shop, and I'm guessing that wasn't enough for I don't know to keep her flat and that, but she had a job at the start, but we don't actually see where that went.
I was assumed when the police officers were asking her, couldn't she get an advance from work? She said yes too many times. I assumed she'd like that job had fallen through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah,
just assumed it was.
Yeah.
I forgot about that bit. Yeah. Um, I'll wait for time. Oh, we've got plenty of time. Um, oh yeah, so near the end, she's in a cafe and she starts talking with this guy and they get in this real deep philosophical conversation where sort of they talk about life and communicating and what it means to speak to each other and all that. What did you think of that scene? I'm
I've
assuming
only
that was
seen it
what you were
like.
talking. I kind of assumed that was the scene you
That's
were
what I
talking about.
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. Um, yeah, I did. I quite liked it because I think even though it is pretty much just telling you
Mm-hmm.
everything, it's not showing you much. The whole film does a lot of telling and not a lot of showing. I thought a little bit. Um, I thought it kind of at least helped put everything else into perspective because when I watched it the first time, I was a bit like you. I was kind of like, I don't. I like I'm happy to keep watching, but I don't entirely know where it's going, and it could seem a little bit meandering at some points. But then that scene put everything else a bit into perspective, and then I enjoyed it much more watching it the second time because I knew where it was going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Kind of just laying it out simply was quite a nice break from the tone of the rest of the film.
Yeah.
What did you make of their conversation, Simon?
Oh, sorry. Um, it was. I mean, it was interesting. All the dialogue in the film is kind of, it serves a very important purpose. It's not just there for dialogue's sake, which I found, refreshing, because I feel like a lot of dialogue in kind of more modern films doesn't have as much impact as it should. So I enjoyed that. So the overall conversation, I thought, was quite impactful, just as a kind of subject to explore.
Yeah, that was one of the scenes I rewatched because it was the most dialogue heavy, just so I could get the full gist of what was being said. I'll be honest, the older I get, the less interested I am in philosophy. I should mention that guy playing that character I'm assuming he's dead now because he was old there. He was a real life famous philosopher. But I don't know. I just found what they were talking about kind of shallow. Like they talk like I get it. I get why people have these conversations, but I just find focusing on details about things that are very minimal and esoteric. The older I get, the more I start to think, is this just a waste of time? Because he was talking about, I often wonder why we speak, why speaking is so important to life, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think, well, yeah, it's self-evident why speaking is so important to life, because we need to communicate. Because otherwise we'd just be pointing at things and grunting and hitting each other.
Is that not the point that speech is quite complex though? Because as we were saying earlier, she's not entirely honest, and she's kind of interested in what she says to people. So is that not what he was trying to talk about, was the power of speech and how you can use it?
Yeah, I get that, but it was in such a roundabout. I'm just talking. This is my own biases and prejudices towards waxing philosophical. Once he kind of got to the point that, because the conversation started of, I often find myself in a position where I just don't know what to say, or I knew what I was going to say, but when it comes to it, I just can't, and I can relate to that. Done that quite a lot in this podcast. Yeah, I kind of, by the end, in fact, no, I should touch upon near the end of the conversation. As he was talking, she stared right into the camera, and I forget exactly what he was talking about at the time that made her look into the camera. I'm guessing that was the most meta part of it, if you know what I mean. Can someone remind me of that?
I don't remember. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay. Simon, that particular instance.
Yeah, either.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing with subtitles, is it's really hard to quote something because it just goes on my head after I've read it. But I remember the point of it. I just can't quote the exact words to you.
Yeah. I'm sure we can find online somewhere.
Yeah.
Transcript.
I get what you mean in that no one ever has conversations like that.
Speak for yourself.
Do you have conversations like that?
Yeah.
Maybe when I'm drunk with my mates, but not just in a cafe.
Of course you do,
My best friend's really into philosophy. I can't avoid it.
I can tell you, I used to be philosophical. To be honest, I don't really take drugs anymore. But when I was kind of experimenting with that, I was kind of doing the philosophy thing. But now that I don't, I just don't have
philosophy is not real philosophy. It's a kind of exertion of kind of real, like, artificial happiness when you've sat in a room with someone who hasn't been able to leave the house for 3 years and they're talking about mortality. That's how horrendously boring philosophy is.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of, for at least me, like, when you're high and you're talking about the kind of like wonders of the universe, like why are we here, what's the point of it all, it becomes almost fantastical. And when you actually talk to someone about it out with that state, it's awfully dreich.
Mm.
Yeah. There's not much, you don't get that kind of thrill and excitement of it all. It's just like, oh god,
Yeah.
is this it? That's why I don't like talking about philosophy.
Yeah.
Because it does feel, is this it?
Mm-hmm. What you mean once you get into the whole existential kind of notion?
Yeah.
I mean, there's
and
that.
It always goes back to existential.
I just kind of find a lot of it now. I'm not going to say the whole thing because obviously philosophy isn't just one thing. There's this whole multi-layered sort ofness of it. But I just find a lot of what people talk about in these, when it comes to these kind of things, just impractical. Like there's not really much you can do with it that's useful, and it gets to a point where it becomes a bit self-indulgent, and people are just like focusing on the most minute esoteric details. And like people come, like a friend of a friend was doing a kind of philosophy night class, and I was at my friend's flat, and his flatmate, I should say, came back from this night class, and he's saying like, oh, we were talking about how only the things that you perceive are what's really real, if you know where I'm going with this. Like this idea that your dreams are real. Like the only things that are true are the subjective truths, and I'm like, no, because even things that you don't perceive are real. Like, have you ever stood on a bit of Lego? I, I didn't know it was there. I didn't know it was there, but it was there.
And now I'm bleeding.
Yeah. God, do you remember that standing on a bit of Lego on your bare feet in the middle of the night? Oh my God, it's the worst
There's
pain.
no pain. There's no pain comparable.
No,
how the fuck have you gone from talking about a Jean-Luc Godard film to a philosophy conversation to Lego sort of step on, isn't it?
Yep. Are you saying Lego isn't philosophical?
I would never say that. I'm so sorry.
No, it's cold and it's brutal and it's dispassionate.
Soviet philosophy then.
Yep. Is there anything else we want to touch upon? We'll have to go to a quick intermission and then in a short space of time. Is there anything else anything else about the film you'd quite like to talk about?
I feel like we've, it was only an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I feel like we've touched like kind of the main pointers of the film.
Yeah, it did actually kind of feel like a sort of extended short film, or maybe like a series of short films.
Yeah, I like how it didn't lag on too much.
Yeah, and
what do you think of the dancing scene where she's?
Standards of dancing have changed a hell of a lot since the early '60s. That was pretty basic dancing. Even I could do that. I'm the world's worst dancer. Yeah, I mean, showed her kind of being a bit exuberant and letting her hair down, and she's a bit more gallus because she's making money. Because, you know what I mean, reality hasn't come crashing down around her just yet. And I like the scene. I like the long interrupted takes. In fact, rewatching it, I just realised how a lot of scenes, like the scene in the record shop, that was all one take. Like, pretty sure the scene in the cafe where she meets the photographer after she goes to the pictures, that was one take. There's quite a few like that. So, yeah, it was a good scene.
Yeah.
Was there anything else I wanted to say? No, I think kind of we've pretty much said all we have to say about the film.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Well, you know that bit where he like blows the balloon?
Oh yeah.
He tends to blow the balloon. I hated that because I had my headphones in at full volume and I thought I was going to die. It was such a horrible noise.
Oh God.
Really?
like his whistling. Do you not remember? It was horrible. It was so like high pitched and like screechy.
Okay, I didn't have my headphones in when I watched it, so
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I thought it was all right. Like, would you be interested in watching more of Goodzard's work, or after this?
I mean, probably.
I get
Yeah,
that he's
definitely.
a very influential figure. Um, huh. Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of people study film are told to watch French New Wave stuff, so I really haven't watched any of it, so I feel like it's something I should get to grips with.
Mm.
It's supposed to be where modern cinema was born, that sort of thing, whatever that means.
Jesus. Yeah.
Right, so this is going to be this might be our shortest episode. Robert,
Because
thanks for
Daniel's going
joining.
to blab his mouth off.
Yeah, exactly. Rob, thanks for joining us. Hopefully this will be one of many.
Yeah, I would like to come back. This is hard. This is way harder than I thought it would be. You
Yeah.
guys do a good job.
Yeah, well, what is this, our fifth? Our fourth?
Yes?
This is our fifth.
Yeah, this is our fifth.
And it's our first 1960s film as well. We need to get out of this decade.
Yeah, we need to change that up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, Rab, for coming. Who we have on next week, we don't know. We shall see. But
Stay tuned to find out.
okay.
Buzzing.
See you later, folks. It's my pick next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.